Mm. Hey there. What's up, people? I've never had a proper intro for my channel. It's always something different, so hey, howdy, what's up? It is what it is. Maybe I should stand by that. Just don't curate my shit. It's just funny to me over the years. I always think about this, like how disorganized I am when I make my videos. But today's topic, the reason it's disorganized is because I don't like reading from a script. I actually have a bunch of scripts I've written. They just sound horrible. Like, I like writing music. I like writing short stories, but I can't write a script for my life. So, it is what it is. But I wanted to talk about. I was thinking today about ways to win a debate, to win an argument, but not in the sense you might think. And I'm not here to say these are the secrets to, convincing people that you're correct or persuasive thinking, that kind of shit. Fuck all that. I hate people that use that kind of stuff, actually. And there are a lot of people out there, especially in the business world, that they'll lie right to your fucking face, you know. Oh, yeah, you're awesome. You're great. It's kind of the way that a lot of the people from other countries, as well as in our government, like, I hate to bring it up, but a great example was the way that people treated Trump. Trump, knowing that he loved praise, so they would just praise him and he'd, be on their good side. The whole thing is, often people do not like to be wrong. And if you call them out on being wrong, it becomes this huge thing. And it's something that's somewhat universal because all of us, to some degree or another, dislike when, I mean, even the most, sure of themselves scientists will admit to you, God, I hate being wrong. I mean, nobody wants to admit they've made a big mistake on whether it's something you believed your whole life or something that you just learned last week. But never through history have people been so sure of themselves as they are today as to the facts about everything that's going on. For example, people didn't claim to know the full story of what's happening in world events when I was a kid, even. And when my parents were kids, it was even less. I mean, you'd hear what you heard on the news. But even when the internet came out in the early days, everybody was all of a sudden informed and knew everything that was going on in the world. But we've found that just not to be true. A decade or two later, we're still stuck in the same stupid bullshit we were, with misinformation and advertising and all the same crap we had before. So, to get to the point here, we have a lot of debates online. And over my tenure here on YouTube of 12 years, making 4,500 videos or more, I've had a lot of arguments with people. Debates, arguments, call them what you will. Sometimes it's just somebody who wants to be an asshole. And I've learned long ago to identify a troll comment, and it's not always by a troll. Sometimes it's by a person that you respect or like. It could be a subscriber you've had for a long time, but you can just tell they're in a bad mood that day, right? And they leave something that's really, a jerk comment. The point being that in the past I learned to deal with that by saying, dude, sorry if you're having a bad day, but don't take it out on me. And it always resolves itself. That's what happens in real life. I've learned to treat people online the same way I would treat them in real life. In other words, I don't say shit online that I would not say to a person in their face. It's kind of one of my inner principles, I'm not here to hide behind a camera and talk about shit. But when I do have arguments or debates with people, it can get heated sometimes, but I think that's a beautiful thing. There's 3 ways to win a debate. To get to the main point here, this is of course kind of a joke, because you either all win or nobody wins. The first one is obvious. Don't debate in the first place. If it's not worth your time, if it's trivial, you have to consider whether a debate is even worth having. Am I even going to argue this point? I find myself not looking past that sometimes and being like, whoa, back up for a minute. Don't bother with this. Some stranger you've never met, that you're arguing about something with, which is why I've always turned off replies on my, comments I post on YouTube, other videos. However, I've found myself saying things that make me sound like kind of a dick sometimes. I think we all have, especially if we're just riled up by a video we saw. Now look, lately in the past I've watched a lot of the cop videos. There have been times when I'm on the side of the criminals, in other words, wow, that cop's an asshole, and then times when I'm on the side of the cops, like, wow, that criminal's a dick. Looking at it from both sides, you understand that cops have to deal with some really shitty people, and we need cops. So there was one extreme view of abolish the police, and another view is we need more police. I think that, it's always somewhere in the middle, just better police, better policing and better accountability, and that's what we're doing, right? So, in other words, in those comment sections, the way that people argue for or against the cops, the debates people have, they're so ridiculous. And you're like, I'm not going to buy into this shit. Then you find yourself typing something and you're like, God damn it, I did it anyway. So the first one, yes, as I said, don't debate in the first place. The second one is the one that's least recommended, which is be louder and more persuasive and have more Instagram followers than the other person so you can sound like you know what you're talking about. Now, this can go either way depending. I feel like if people really use their influencer status for actual good rather than selling a bunch of products, it would be a different story. But really, the causes are pretty bullshit. I don't see a lot of action really happening. Humans naturally are pretty selfish, and especially people who acquired a bunch of wealth just posting their bodies on Instagram and pretending like they have quote content, right? Or on YouTube or elsewhere. I mean, the streaming was notorious with chicks with their tits hanging out, that kind of shit. It's been an absurd ride. The internet, the rise of bullshit, is not really a rise of internet bullshit, but rather finally the bullshit we've always had filtering out into the world. The kooks and the quacks. And so people are arguing more than ever because people have different opinions. Which brings me to the third way to win a debate or argument, which is the one that I consider really the most useful and the most efficient, and that's the Aristotelian argument. Aristotle had his own idea of what an argument was. It's where both people speak their sides. And how often do you ever hear a debate where people give each other time to speak? It's pretty fucking rare. There are some, but man, I understand that things get heated, but it's ridiculous when two people are just talking over three or four or five. It's like, shut the fuck up, listen to the other person, hear what they have to say, hear them, listen, process, and learn about other people's lives. It's how I've gone from, not politically, but mentally I'm a liberal, and I believe in freedom of choice, freedom from government intervention, harassment, a classic liberal, if you will. But other than that, I don't hold any particular belief system. I hear conservatives that have great points. I hear Democrats that have great points. I hear even some good points that communism came up with, right? But now kids have taken these things to the extreme. They're either hardcore conservative, hardcore left, or they're these actual Marxists. How fucking ridiculous can you get? I mean, millions of people have died under communism and just been swept under the rug. But no, we can make it work. It's the reactionary behaviors that we have today. They bring a lot of, tensions, and therefore we argue more than ever. Yet we don't fucking listen to each other. We don't listen to what we have to say. We're just acting like hairless apes, running around just like buying the groceries, coming home, and then when somebody disagrees with us, we go off the rocker and get all upset about it. I've never lost sleep over an argument. To me, it's something that's both parties are supposed to walk away with gained knowledge. The problem today is that all a person has to say is, that's too long, I didn't read it, TLDR, or, well, I don't believe that guy, or I don't believe that truth, or this is what these people say. We're living in a post-truth era. It's not like some, cyber slogan to get attention. It's a true thing that's actually happening. There was a time, if you go back and watch the interviews from the 60s, 70s, like philosophers and media personalities, they were intelligent. And people are just getting dumber. And yeah, the internet plays a huge role, of course, but the internet's just a pipeline. It's not a thing. The internet is just a communication method. It's just like saying the phone lines caused us to be on the phone all the time. They exist, therefore we use them, just like we use the internet, and we have to train ourselves. Here's the thing that I've learned. All collective values, all collective opinions, rather, have value. And this means that whether it's small groups or large groups, there is some value in the traditions that they uphold and the ideals that they hold, especially if they've been through hundreds, if not thousands of years. This has led me to give a different look to conservatives than I did before and say, okay, if half the nation, or a large percentage of the nation rather, thinks of themselves as conservative, there must be certain values that people want to uphold that they feel that the other side is not holding up, which is totally understandable. People have switched sides all through history, and I've watched it from the middle because I have voted Democrat in the past, but I really never thought that I would understand a Republican stance. But they've kind of taken over. The Republicans of today are like the Democrats were back in the Clinton era. I'm serious. Like, they're doing the same kind of suppressive shit on the left that the right wingers were doing back in the 80s, and the left, of course. But the whole thing is, when people realize that politics are just fixed and that there's no real point in taking a side, but rather understanding each other, we can get way past a lot of pointless arguments. I mean, I had to abandon Twitter a long time ago. I used it for maybe on and off for like less than a year, maybe 6 months, and I couldn't do it because I know that anonymous posting, when I'm not looking at the camera, you get yourself into saying some stupid shit. It's like, why am I arguing with this stranger that may be a fucking bot for all I know? And that's another thing, you know. I could go into I guess the AI thing, because how do you know I'm not an AI created carpet channel, right? But no, there's a lot of originality being lost there, and because of that, people have lost trust in each other because they feel like not AI necessarily, but the way that people are selling each other ads, making cheaper and cheaper content that has really no meaning, no heart, and people are suspicious of each other, and that's totally understandable. But back to the collective opinions, the medium and small groups, the collective opinions matter because they work for the group. When you get to something the size of the US, this is when I think it falls apart. In other words, what I'm saying is, I do believe in some sort of a democracy. I also believe in some sort of capitalism, free market. I do believe in a free market if it's not inhibited by laws that support corporations. So what I'm getting at is a free market would work in a small town. You can choose what you want to sell and what you don't. If the villagers don't like you, they'll pummel you. The same way that a leader in a small town, if he's not living up to expectations, people see him at the market. They see him on the corner. And he has to live up to his neighbors because he knows his neighbors. What I think is lost is that connection. And by keeping us divided, not just between states, but individuals, because they're different from each other. It's something that we are overcoming, but there's a lot of it that's just, there's a wedge pushed between people to keep people distracted from the real problems in the world. The corporate interests that are lobbying these various government officials and the ones who are making all the money. So while we're arguing about stupid shit, there are some really good arguments to be made about why people should be doing the right thing. I mean, people are very ignorant about what's really going on in the world. And it shows with groups like, say, Just Stop Oil or the Extinction Rebellion. These are the guys that over in the UK, they're sit in front of traffic with these banners and won't move. People try to pull them off. They run back out. They don't care if they're arrested. Fine. You think you're making a difference, but what you're really doing is, as many have pointed out, slowing down traffic, causing more pollution, causing people to be late for work, getting fired, having problems. They have to feed their kids. These are basically, some young and some retired, entitled people who can afford to sit out on the road all day and protest against the people instead of the corporations, because it's easier to sit in front of a highway than it is to sit in front of the ExxonMobil refinery, or do something that really, they claim it's to get attention, but what it does is it turns people against real activism. And the point I'm making here is that's a comparison, an analogy rather, for how when we argue about dumb things, it puts people on edge about every debate we have. All of a sudden, what the color red looks like in the sky is up for debate, and whether, whether nature is, whether it's going to rain or not, like fist fights about the dumbest shit you can imagine. I feel like people are really on edge, and therefore it's almost like we're looking for something to be upset about that we can point a finger at. Speaking of the activists, they call this climate anxiety. I made a video about it quite a while back, I think, but I don't know if I ever uploaded it. But I didn't want to offend anybody who was environmentalist, because I'm an environmentalist. I care about my planet. When I was a kid, it was these guys who would blow up various tractors and logging equipment. They were called, oh God, I can't remember, but they would like set up in the trees, and I think they're still around. But I had mixed feelings even as a teenager. I'm like, oh, right on, yeah, they're stopping logging in the old growth forests. But then some of these groups started protesting in spots that can be logged, that they're fine, they're not old growth trees, and it's fair enough as long as they're replanted. We've kind of changed the way we do things. But the point is, we need wood, we need to build. When you're trying to stop progress, yes, it slows down pollution, but it also slows down people. The point about the Just Stop Oil thing is you're only really, they said even if the US and the UK stopped using all their fossil fuels tomorrow, it wouldn't even put a dent, because most of it's coming from China these days and India, and they sure as hell aren't going to stop. And if they did, you'd have all of these, homes and people who couldn't heat or cool their homes, and they'd die. So it's killing people either way. We're stuck in a really fucked up conundrum. And I'm sorry to get off topic here, but the point is, I guess, arguments about dumb, petty shit don't allow for the bigger questions of how do we learn to get along? How do we learn how to agree on certain topics without getting all upset about dumb shit? So the reason why I call all collective opinions have value is because they fucking exist. It's that simple. Because people have created them. There's always some new group, especially of young people, who come up and think that they're going to change history. And that's fine if it's good and if it's positive. But the reality is that a lot of the things we have worked because they work. This is how we've ended up with longer lives, safer homes, better insulation. There's even a group in Britain called themselves Insulate Britain, is the name of their movement. And they sit out and they block traffic because they want homes insulated in Britain. That makes sense. But I thought, well, why not take those millions of dollars in donations for these groups, go out and buy a bunch of insulation from a company, and start insulating homes? The Just Stop Oil people went out and they blocked traffic to Burning Man, which I wanted to make a whole video about Burning Man, Muddy Man, this year. I felt bad, but at the same time I didn't, because it has really, there are so many good people there, burners, that really care about the environment and clean up all their shit, even though it was muddy as hell. I didn't know that was going to make national news. My coworker is down there, but on the way in, they were blocked by this group of Just Stop Oil protesters, and basically, burners weren't having it. The cops showed up and they ended up driving through their barrier and saying the fuck off the road and handcuffing them all. A little aggressively, I must say. But I was thinking, here you are blocking the people driving into Burning Man. If you want to make a difference, talk to the people who fly in on private jets. Because there are people who pay $120,000, $150,000 for a ticket to go to one of these exclusive VIP Burning Man camps. And the irony here was that when it started raining on Friday, by Saturday they had to shut down the airport, meaning all the rich people were trapped there. All the Silicon Valley wealthy people. Sure, they had accommodations, but like everyone else, they were finally brought down to the level, the reality of nature. Kicked some ass. So, yeah, a little off topic, but I like talking about random shit. Um, it was about collective opinions and ideas. There was a point I was going to make about Burning Man, but I guess it connected to the Just Stop Oil people. It was pretty funny. Um, like I said, I'm all for the environment. I go out into the woods. I talk to trees. I hug trees. I give a shit. I clean up campsites, not just my own, but other people's. You know, it's like all we can do is what we do. In fact, I have a video I'd love to share with you guys. If somebody reminds me in the comments, I'll post it. I'll have to dig it out on my computer, but I painted this huge mural and it said, "Clean up your shit," because there was so much teepee around this campsite. And it was painted on a bridge that already had all this shitty graffiti, so I painted over it with this giant mural. Spent like a whole day doing it because I was camping, but I got to dig that out and share it again because it was a long time ago. But I give a fuck. Most of us give a fuck. And that was the point. When you're sitting out on the road and you're telling people, we're trying to stop oil, you're like, okay, well, harming us, we know. The people fucking know. We all deal with it. We're all going to work to try to afford to live in a place that isn't in a smoggy, shitty area because we're doing the best we can. Will you go nuclear? Or are you opposed to nuclear too? Because that's what we're going to have to do. But anyway, I digress. As I said, a good argument, we should all gain something. And something I've learned is that, you know, people's egos do definitely get in the way, but when I talk about ego, there are many different definitions of it. I have to go get a battery charger because my phone says it's about to die, so 1 second, I'm going to pause this. Okay, I'm back, and I got that figured out. And now I can get back to my conversation that went from talking about ways to win a debate or argument all the way into things about Just Stop Oil and various environmental groups. And I guess the point I was trying to make in retrospect was that often we have good intentions in our hearts, but we're too ignorant to understand what we're talking about. We don't understand how to go about what we need to do. We haven't educated ourselves properly on methods to do something properly, and it makes everyone else look bad in the field. This happens in religion with preachers who are asking you for money, and then there's good churches. Then it happens in science where there are people that just make up studies for funding all the time. Happens in the pharmaceutical industry a lot. But people go along with it, and they don't know any better because it's all they have is the scientific info there. But there are also great scientists out there who do phenomenal research and will admit if their studies aren't what they thought they were. So there are people who are right and wrong, and often we don't know who they are. There are people who have good and bad intentions, but ultimately insults and fallacies in an argument are something that instantly lead me down an abandonment path in a good discussion. Like if a person reverts to something about me personally, I instantly know that they're out of ammo, basically. You know, if a discussion becomes about me when it was about something else, I'm like, oh, this guy's pissed off, or gal's pissed off, or whoever it is. And I have been attacked pretty heavily on my channel in the past. I've had threats. I've even had violent threats against my family once from this dude. There's some lunatics out there. Get out of here, B. I don't like yellow jackets, dude. Hold on. Yeah, I'm such a coward when it comes to yellow jackets. I can't stand them. They always mess with me. So where was I? Insults and fallacies do nothing to further a discussion, and it's good to abandon a discussion if people use, especially fallacies. But go on, go away. He's back, but he'll find somewhere else to go, I hope. Go on. You should have seen me when I was a kid. I would run from yellow jackets. Like, I would book off running. I've been attacked. We had nests over here, and I ran into one in the woods a couple times. Yeah, life is funny, you know. I ain't scared of nothing. A bee. Uh, so I was talking about how ego comes to the surface when, and this is something I've really tried to take note of because ego's talked about a lot. It often comes to the surface when people feel like they're wrong. And when we're wrong is when whatever you might call the ego, maybe the super ego, yeah, I'm not going to go into Freud and all that crap. I try to like distance myself from these quote studies of psychology and psychiatry and just say, what do I see in humans? Because it's a different world. If Freud had the internet, he would have been way smarter. Like, whether we know it or not, each one of us probably has a better idea of psychology of the average person than, you know, anyone through history, because the internet allows us to hear so many different opinions, uncensored and untamed, that you can say, wow, okay, so this is how people act, at least. And it's not the real world, as people say, but it is the real world because people are there. Everyone's on the fucking internet, so you can't deny that that is the real world now. But it's not. When you go out and you talk to people in person, people are different. That's true. The thing is, they just hold back what they really feel, and they don't say everything they say on the internet, which is understandable. But when people call us wrong or we call others wrong and we don't have evidence, then that's when usually the ego takes a hit. Because, I mean, the side note here is that there is no evidence that's worthy these days. In other words, at one time in history, if I debated somebody about something and I sent them a journal, to a scientific journal link to an article, they would read it and be like, wow, damn, dude, well, shit, I didn't know that. Now it seems like everybody's just, nope, ain't true, it's all fake. And it happens quite a bit, and I think it's kind of a cop-out, a way for us to escape, which is why it takes time to process. But the ego, when you really want to see an ego, it comes to the surface when a person knows that they're wrong, and or at least wants to question if they're wrong. And arguing from ignorance, especially, making claims that we cannot back up. Now, I'm wrong sometimes, and I'll admit it. I haven't figured out when. No, I'm kidding. I have this joke with my buddy. I'm like, yeah, I thought I was wrong one time, but it turned out I was wrong about being wrong. The only time I was wrong, I thought I was wrong. You can word it however you want, but I just don't. I'm not afraid of being mistaken. I just don't make claims I can't back up. If I believe something, I believe it for myself, not for other people. So when I get into a debate with somebody and they say, oh, you believe this? They're like, yeah, do you? I say, no, I believe this. And they say, well, but you're wrong, and here's the proof. And it always surprises people when you say, I don't care if I'm wrong. Or rather, this particular subject, I'm not that interested in having a debate about, because I believe what I believe. But ultimately, since I don't have a lot of real beliefs, I am kind of a scientific guy, and I like evidence on shit. But I do believe in a universal mind or consciousness. But that's another story altogether. But here's the thing about arguing. We have to take time to process the discussions we have with other people, first of all. So when we find it getting too heated, just back off for a while and do some thinking, you know. And if it's become personal, just abandon it right away. And these are just my discussions that what I've learned about having conversations like this. Don't revel in just being right, because ultimately within, like I said, the Aristotelian argument, it was about both people being right or all people being right. So we are, quote, all right. And I would love to see arguments where people all benefit. That's why people love Joe Rogan. Whatever people think about Joe Rogan himself, it fucking doesn't matter. It pales in comparison to the facts that his, the most popular podcast in the world, it's not even about Joe at all. A lot of people don't even like Joe. In fact, he has so many different types of shows. It's about the people. There's a totally different crowd that listens to the martial arts shows as the ones that listen to the other podcasts. There's people who go for the UFO ones, people who go for the psychology ones. A lot of different people. I've found even the ones with the comedians can be some of the most insightful. A 3-hour conversation between two dudes who are in the industry where they're exposed to a lot of random bullshit, just going by how they feel, they end up being great discussions. And but the point here is that the arguments they have, Joe will argue with people, but be like, no, I respect that. I just don't agree. And he disagrees with people quite a bit. And you could tell people kind of hits you on the shoulder a little bit. I mean, sure, if you're on a Joe Rogan experience and somebody fucking, like, Joe calls you out on something you said, that's got to be pretty hardcore and embarrassing. But people take it well because Joe's easygoing. And the point I'm making is that if you're easygoing, people will have debates with you without feeling offended. The only time I get intense is when people make bold claims and say I should believe what they believe. And this is a big impasse within discussions. When a person says, I disagree with your assessment, I say, good. I'm cool with that. I have no problem with being wrong. I try to hold a Zen mentality that, just like with my beliefs in, the spiritual, the supernatural, we just can't understand it. It's beyond us, and trying to label it and put names on it is just, to me, fruitless. But I also have a Zen mentality when it comes to arguing, in the sense that I do not attach myself to my ideas. When in Buddhism they talk about attachment, a lot of people think about possessions and money. And so this whole idea of non-attachment, a lot of folks in the West anyway, they disregard the most important thing. Even though we talk about ego, it's more than that. It's attachment to ideas. And this is why they'll say, if you see the Buddha in the street, kill him, or burn the Buddha. These are, terms to reflect the fact that we don't need physical representations of things we can't explain. And I find these things fascinating, because I believe ancient religion and culture play a huge role in these things. And that's why I brought up Aristotle, in the Aristotelian argument. Like, people have been debating shit for a long time. When did we get so fucking bad at it? So, as I said, you got to take time to process it. Don't try to revel in being right, and then let go of bias. And that's one of the hardest ones, I think, letting go of bias. It doesn't mean you can't be biased. It just means anytime somebody presents something you disagree with, you have to shut down that part of your frontal cortex, maybe it is. You'll react to something a certain way, but you can't quite process it once your adrenaline's flowing. Let's say you hear something, a horrible headline, and you're like, you just want to argue about it, because you're already primed to be like, I hate this, I disagree with this, right? Or maybe you love it, and you have the opposite reaction. But the thing is, to look at things neutrally is very hard. And it's not like I can tell you how to do that. All of us have a hard time with it. And we all know it, We're all trying. Well, no, we're not all trying. A lot of people aren't trying at all. And that's the problem. I guess that's why I'm making this video. A lot of people are not trying at all. The internet's just full of fucking experts. Armchair experts at everything. I've had where people tell me, oh, you think you're right, but I always say, no, I don't. Because I don't make claims. And it's really hard to argue against that. I don't make bold claims. I don't make educational videos on my channel. I don't need to make apology videos because I was wrong about something. Because I really try to just go by what's in my heart and what I feel, and make sure people know. Even if I do make a claim, do your own research. Jeez, grow up. I plead the fifth when necessary. And I'll say nothing if I don't need to. I know my limits and what I shouldn't talk about. And one of the hardest things to do, and something I've been working on, is not letting my old opinions or politics get in the way. But especially glad that I don't let my politics or my opinions get between friends and family. I have friends who have lost their other friends because They had different political opinions. That to me is just fucking absurd, and people need to grow the hell up. And it's completely unnecessary to lose longtime friends over elections. But it's the world we're in. And I don't know what to do about it, but I can only work from my end where I am right now, living my life. And I'm doing the best I can to accept all people and all beliefs while still being able to honestly and openly scoff at things I call bullshit on. It's a balance, but it works for me. And I have empathy for a lot of people, most humans, I would say. I guess in some way I have empathy for all humans. But I think philosophy really matters a lot. And our beliefs, all of them, need to be analyzed carefully. And whatever's left after we ferment these ideas and process these debates is hopefully a great beer is left after we ferment. But the truth is what should be left. Or at the very least, a truth that's good enough for people to accept in a universe that we just don't understand. And oh, do we get excited about new truths we discover. All of us do it. We find some kind of new yoga thing or new tool for carpentry, or a new type of plant to grow, whatever it might be, and we get all excited about something and then we lose interest. And everybody's going through different things at different times. We have different attitudes, behaviors. We're just hairless apes. We've just got to get rid of that fear of death and being wrong. The two things that seem to bother people the most. And trust in nature. Follow your heart and all that shit. So I'll talk to y'all next time. This was a long one, but I had a lot to say, I guess. And I'll talk to you next time. Be well. Say hi to your friends. Say hi to your mom. Say hi to your grandma if you got one. I didn't really have any grandmas that were alive for long. And I'll talk to you soon. If I have a Patreon, if you want to check that out, Carpo719. And I also have a podcast called 15-Minute Free Thinking. And all that shit's in the description, link, whatever. And I'll see you next time. Peace out.